Still says preparing to live stream.
I'm getting a symbol. We're live now.
Very good.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We've got a fairly full agenda. We've got 4 guests, and what I suggest we do is we'll take our guests out of order so that they can go ahead and make their reports to us, and we can transact whatever business we need with them and then move on to the rest of our agenda. So if no one has, I guess why don't we start with our bond counsel and our fiscal agent? That may be the easiest ones to get out of the way first. I think your all's fairly straightforward. So
sure.
Who should go first, Lewis or Christian?
Probably we'll let Lewis go. Is that okay, Lewis, or would you prefer I go ahead?
No, I'll go first. I have a quick presentation here. It's 3 slides, and it's really just a quick update from our last discussion. Does everyone have that available to them?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone not have it available? I guess I should ask that instead. No. So I'm going to walk through just a quick update, and then Christian had 2 resolutions he's proposing that I'm also recommending, and that he'll walk through those thereafter. So I am on the 2nd page, just a quick market update. I think last time I was in the boardroom with you guys was back in July. And the market update back then was a little more volatile. What has happened since then is really just the Federal Reserve has maintained its commitment to support markets. Kind of the statement that we're using now is low for long. Even Janet Yellen, the new treasurer that Biden had appointed, not yet confirmed, has kind of reiterated this, and she expects interest rates to remain low for a while. You can see on these 2 curves on the bottom, the orange line and the blue line. And so this is the last time we talked. This time we're talking. Really almost no change between then and now, which is a good thing for you guys. Switching to page 3. So the interest rate market obviously hasn't moved much, but the project fund balance is still being determined and is subject to change up until the point when we do the construction bid award process. But right now we're showing $3 million of project fund. And like I said, I think it's going to, between talking to Tom and Karen, hoping to come in less than that, but we're just showing debt service numbers based off of that number right now. I think 2 big points I guess I should say here is that at $3 million project fund and current interest rate market at 25 years, we're about $160,000 of annual debt service. And one of the milestones in raising the capital is going through their bond rating process. I know we've talked about this in the past. Karen and myself have completed this process and have come out with the AA3 credit rating, which is fantastic. So we have even more confidence of where interest rates will land for Woodford Library when we actually go to raise the capital. And then maybe I'll just go over page 3 right quick, and then we can take a breath and answer any questions. This is just an updated draft timeline based off of kind of the internal conversations I'm having with Karen, Christian, and Tom. It's really predicated on when Codell can get the bid packets out and we can receive feedback and get those awards out for the construction bid process. The good news from bond counsel and the fiscal agent's point of view is that a lot of the documentation work has been done outside of these 2 resolutions that Christian's going to propose here in a minute. So once we have the construction bid award process complete, it's just a few weeks out from there before we go out and actually market the debt and raise the capital for the library. So I'll take a break there before we jump to Christian for these 2 resolutions. Any questions?
No.
Is that my cue to go ahead, or you all nobody has any questions for Lewis?
pretty cut and dried.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'll go ahead. Karen, have you had a chance to distribute these two resolutions? Does anybody have a copy of them or?
Yes, sir, they have them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I'm not expecting anybody to read them, but I can summarize them for you. So in the Great Recession of 2008, the IRS and the SEC tightened up their regulations surrounding the municipal bond market. And while nobody in Kentucky, maybe with one or two exceptions, defaulted in that time period, we've gotten a tightening of the regs around these bond issues. And so that the result is these two resolutions. The first one, we'll start with the one that says at the top, resolution regarding IRS regulations. And so for both these resolutions, all we're asking the board to do is adopt guidelines for the board to try and follow. And it's a way of recognizing that the board's issuing bonds and it has certain obligations. And so with this, the one at the top, IRS regulations, I want to put Karen at ease a little bit, and she understands the banking world and recognizes, I think, some of these duties. But this IRS resolution, if the board decides to adopt it, which I'd recommend, it asks that a form be filed with the feds for this bond issue. I'm going to do that. It asks that the library keep a copy of the bond documents. I'm going to do that. I'll provide the board and Karen in the library with an electronic copy and a paper copy. It asks that you keep records of how you spent the bond proceeds. And that's one thing I'm very confident libraries are good at doing, is keeping records, and you keep them forever, for a long time, Karen, in a safe place, just so that we can tell the IRS how you spent the money. Is the point of that. So also to let bond counsel know if construction is going to be delayed or canceled. The next one is advising bond counsel if you're going to invest the bond proceeds. So if Jerry comes to you, Karen, and says, I got this great deal in the Caymans, it might be a really good idea, but call your bond counsel first just to make sure we're not going to violate any regulations. The next one is private use. So I can't remember whether we discussed this at the last meeting. I'll try and keep it short. But when you get a subsidized interest rate on your debt, which is what this is, the IRS says you can't then use that subsidized money to benefit private corporations. Did we talk about that last time, Karen? Do you remember? So a small part of your library is going to be built with subsidized money. There's still debt on the other library building, so the same rules apply to that one, where you can't rent that part of the building to the local Subway and turn it into a Subway, because Subway is not allowed to benefit from these super awesome interest rates. So if you decide to take the addition and turn it into a sandwich shop, call your bond counsel. So that's essentially what this IRS resolution says in the procedures that are attached to the resolution. The sort of the more immediate import for me as bond counsel is I'm going to send once the library issues bonds, I send a form to the IRS letting them know that that's been done, and I get to check a box. And the box says that the library has adopted procedures to ensure compliance with IRS regulations. And it's a nice way to avoid the attention of the IRS. That's my best sales pitch on that one I can give. And so I can move on to the next one, or do you all want to ask questions about this one? Do we have any questions?
Before you move on, if anyone doesn't have any questions, why don't we just go ahead and vote on it, so we can take them one at a time. Does anybody have any questions on that resolution? If no one has any questions, do I have a motion to adopt the resolution that's been presented to us regarding the compliance with the IRS requirements?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries 5-0. Okay, Christian, back to you.
All right, thank you, Jerry. And sorry to mess up your investment opportunity in the Caymans, but we'll If that comes up, let me know. We'll figure
That's
it out.
okay. I think Randy can probably get me something.
And Christian,
All right, so if everybody's still conscious, this is the next one. At the top, it says resolution regarding SEC regulations. Is that what it says? I'm not looking at it right now. But it's at the top, it says regarding the SEC. So when the library issues these bonds, they're going to be on the open market. So that means the Securities Exchange Commission has some jurisdiction. And what the SEC is concerned about is disclosure. So just like if a big corporation issues debt, you got to disclose certain information to the market, and that's what the library has an obligation to do. This resolution just lays out some of those requirements. Some of the obvious ones is if there's a default, we're going to have to let the market know. If the library decides to borrow another $500,000, we got to let the market know. Practically once a year, the library is obligated to throw its audit up on a website. And Karen, that Lewis will help you with that, or somebody else at his firm will help you put that together. There's some additional information that we'll throw up on a website that you've produced and formatted for the offering documents. And so practically, Lewis and I will help you with that. The other obligation, these procedures, is just to let your bond counsel know or Lewis know if any of these sort of funny problems come up. I think we're going to miss a payment, or we missed a payment, or the rating company called and said they're going to lower our rating, that kind of thing. Practically, Lewis and I probably find out about those anyway, but you know, just pick up the phone and call if something funny comes up like that. And that's the point of this second resolution, to comply with SEC requirements. The other practical and a more immediate impact of that resolution is for underwriters to bid on the library's bonds. They need to know that these procedures are in place. So they'll call Lewis, they'll call me and say, does the library have procedures in place to ensure compliance with SEC requirements? And we'll be able to say yes. Otherwise, they can't bid. Practically, it makes it harder for them to bid. Any questions about that one?
I have a question, not so much about the procedure, I understand that, but in terms of the reporting requirements. So as Lewis, is part of the library's contract with your firm that you all will basically act as a tickler system? You're going to check on us to make sure that we are meeting the annual requirements, or is that something that after the bond issuance is done, you know, we're on our own?
No, we'll certainly be there to help you every step of the way. And to add to that, we represent Woodford County. So a lot of the economic disclosure information, the top 10 taxpayers, assessed value information, we get that from the county treasurer as it is. So it's really just a replication of that information. So in addition to that, it's literally just your audit. And Chris and I are here for you, every step of that.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned other borrowings of money up to $500,000. What if you just wanted to borrow money, say, to buy a new bookmobile or something? Is that something that you have to report, or is there a $500,000?
That's a good question. It is not a $500,000 requirement. It's a material requirement. So if it's material to the library's finances, or perhaps maybe more specifically material to the security for the bonds. So we don't know.
There hasn't been clear guidance on that. I would echo Christian though. I would say if it's material in affecting your ability to pay the debt, or it's material in your operations, material in how you'd collect taxes, something of that nature, then I would say it's material. The real thing here though is just for Karen to inform us that you guys are doing something. And really, if it feels material to you, you guys should probably let us know.
So I think the bookmobile, the answer would be no, because that doesn't really affect the library's revenues much. It doesn't affect the library's ability to collect its taxes. It's not going to affect the tax base. If you're going to build a branch library and borrow a bunch of money, to do that, then we probably ought to know about it and
Okay.
disclose it. So I'm sorry to be vague, but the guidelines are vague at this point.
Well, that raises a question, which I'm just wondering if for some reason with the calculation of our tax rate, it were to go significantly down, either because of something the legislature put into effect or some screwy reason with how it's calculated, would that ultimately trigger a reporting requirement?
That's a good question. I'm looking right now, Jerry.
And the reason I ask is we somewhat lose control over how much we can raise the rate once, since the legislation that was enacted last year went into effect.
You're right. So Lewis, I'm not looking at the 15C 212, the 10 or 15 items there. I don't think that in economic, I don't think that a decline in revenues necessarily triggers a disclosure, Jerry. I think that it does if it affects the library's ability to pay its debt service. So,
Yeah, and I'd even say it's a step further than that. I would say, I think that was Senate Bill 5 of last year's general session. That you having more local government oversight does not require, in my opinion, that's not a material event. This is specific, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more specific to if it would impact the debt and your ability to service said debt. So I guess it's also a question of how much, revenues would be declining in this scenario. But
well, and
simply-
actually that can be specific, Jerry. If you're going to miss a payment, that's going to be a material event. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't think the market needs to know I know the market does not need to know every time the library's revenues go up and down. If the library is going to miss a payment, that's a material event. And so to the extent that a revenue decrease as a consequence of a tax rate change causes the library to think it can't make its debt service payments, that's when we have to disclose.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Christian or Lewis? Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt the SEC resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the SEC resolution?
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So we'll have to figure out how we're going to get the resolution signed, but you've got your resolutions now.
Yeah.
You can go forward.
Okay, and so with that, Jerry, then what I'll do is in that document that we distribute called the preliminary official statement, I think with this adoption, I don't need a signed resolution to be able to say in that marketing materials that the board has adopted this resolution. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. Is that okay with you, Jerry?
That's fine with me. We can probably make arrangements to get it signed in the next few days. So when we get it done, Karen can go ahead and send you a copy.
Great. Thank you all very much. And it's not a rush because right now we don't have a sale planned until the 2nd. That the marketing materials will go up to the market, a couple of weeks before that. And so at that point, we'll just want to make sure we have everything tied up. But, and then I'll follow up with you, Jerry, to confirm you're going to be around for that sale to authorize the bid.
Okay.
And so right now Lewis, that's March 2nd at 11 a.m., right?
Yes, but that's subject to Tom Smith and Codell and
Right.
that process.
That's tentative. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
I did have
Thank you
one
all
quick
very much.
question for you, Karen. Is there an update on the 2020 audit or when the completion of that may be?
Well, Jared, Mr. Noble is our auditor, and he's reporting on that this evening.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so.
Good timing.
Yeah, I lost the coin flip, so you got to go first.
Yeah, I kind of felt sorry for you, but
It was interesting, actually.
No, it wasn't.
so
A little disappointed.
he's got a really big cup of coffee, I think. So yeah, yep, there we go. So the board has seen the draft of the audit. The presentation is this evening, and so I would venture to say that we'll have something for you soon.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much, and have a good day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Well, Mr. Noble, why don't we take you next?
All right. I'm going to try to share this screen here. Maybe I did it earlier, but have varying levels of success anyway. Let's see what I got. All right. Does everyone have that?
Yep.
All right.
Just
So
like my computer.
this is the audit report from the packet. We'll flip kind of, if I start scrolling too fast, just let me know, but I'm going to move down to the auditor's report, which kind of starts here. Kind of starts here. So at the bottom of this page, we have our opinion. Basically, our opinion is an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion. It means the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, that's kind of what you hope for when you start the audit. And so you guys, it worked out for you that that's the opinion you got. On the next page, we have just some information about our supplementary information that we'll go over later. It's mostly related to the pension and the Opeb, the other post-employment benefit liabilities. And then we also have there, we talk about your report on internal controls, which is at the back of the report as well. Starting on page 3 is the management discussion and analysis. This is put together by Karen and the library staff. It's really more of a narrative version of the financial statement. It gives some highlights, talks about the required financial statements. We did not put this together. We did make sure that everything tied out to the audit, and if there was any changes needed to be made, we kind of got those to Karen. But I'm not going to go over these because this is really it's kind of ancillary to the audit and kind of put together by management. The MD&A goes all the way over to page 5. So on page 6 here, we're going to start the statement of net position. This is basically the full accrual balance sheet for the library. You have $8 million in assets and deferred outflows of resources. $7.5 million of that's in assets. You had $1.5 million in cash and cash equivalents, a little bit of receivables, around $16,000, some prepaid expenses of $22,342. Your total fixed assets net of depreciation is almost $6 million. It's $5.9 million. Gets you down to your $7.55 million of total assets. You have deferred outflows related to pensions and Opeb. You have your subsequent pension and Opeb contributions of $127, deferred outflows related to pensions of $246, $773, and deferred outflows of related to Opeb of $116,051. What the deferred outflows and at the bottom of the page of deferred inflows are basically is every year the actuary for the state, when they determine the liability for the entire state plan, the entire CERS plan, they look at that, and sometimes there's always going to be differences because the actuary is putting together the liability based on estimates, and so each year he looks at those estimates and he compares them, and sometimes makes changes to the assumptions and that sort of stuff. Instead of that number, whatever those changes are for the year, being just plopped into your income statement, they allow us to amortize those in over, depending on what the estimate is, between like 3 and 5 years, basically. So these are the unamortized balances of those items in the deferred outflows there. We'll go over them a little bit later when we get back in the notes, but that's the general gist of what those are. Total deferred outflows were $490,000, leaves you with total assets and deferred outflows of a little over $8 million. The liabilities section, you had total liabilities of 1.8 million. You had accounts payable of almost 25,000. Your current portion of compensated absences were 3,000. Your long-term portion was 27. You had a pension liability of 1.4 million and an Opeb liability of 344,000. Again, total liabilities were 1.8 million. You had deferred inflows of resources of $218,000 total. And then you had net position of almost $6 million, which gets you to total liabilities, deferred inflows, and net position of $8,049,000. The next page is the statement of activities. This one is kind of reads left to right and then top to bottom. So we start with your expenses. The total expenses for the governmental unit was $1.75 million. You had charges for services of 14 and capital operating grants and contributions of 25, leaves you with a net expense in the primary government of $1.7 million. We add to that your general revenues, which are 98% taxing revenues. Your total general revenues were $1.782 million, leaves you with a change in net position of 66,000. We just add that to your beginning net position to get your end of year net position. The next page is the balance sheet for the governmental fund. So what this basically is looking at only at your current, what's really there for current obligations, to cover current obligations. So you have total assets of $1.6 million. It's made up mostly of cash, 1.59 million. And again, you're a little bit of accounts receivable and prepaid expenses. You have total liabilities of 27,000, which are your accounts payable and short-term compensated absences. And your fund balances are $1.6 million. You have non-spendable, which is 22,342. You're probably saying, well, why can't we spend that? It's already been spent on prepaid expenses. That's kind of why it matches the number above. It's non-spendable because you've already spent it. Your unassigned fund balances are almost $1.579 million. Below here, we have a reconciliation, which reconciles, the fund balance to your net position that was back on page 6. We just do that by adding back your long-term assets and liabilities, and you can see those there to get down to your net position on the governmental activities of almost $5.99 million. The next page is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is basically the easiest way to describe this for me is to just call it a cash in, cash out income statement. You had $1.8 million in revenues. Your expenditures were $1.4 million. You had almost 1.5. You had operating capital outlays of $387,000, which takes you down to total expenses of $1.862 million. Your change in fund balance was a decrease of 40,000. So you have your beginning and ending fund balance. On the next page, we just have a reconciliation from your change in fund balance on page 9 back to your change in net position that was on page, would have been page 7. And that's basically by looking at the long-term, adding back the long-term items in there. So you're adding back your capital outlay, you're taking away what your historical depreciation expense was in your collection adjustment. We have your changes for accounts payable at the bottom, and then your changes related to the pension and Opeb liabilities to get you down to the 66,133. The next page starts your notes to your financial statements. Note 1 is pretty boilerplate from year to year. This is the one that has all of your significant accounting policies. If there are a lot of changes in your accounting policies, it would change from year to year, but you guys didn't really have any. It talks about your reporting entity, your basis of presentation, your basis of accounting, which tree is cash and cash equivalents, the KAR or the Kentucky statutes where it covers your budgeting process. Talks about receivables and property tax revenues, property and equipment. Talks about there how you treat your property and equipment. Talks about your fund balances there are recognized under GASB 54. That's where you have the non-spendable and the unassigned. You have the ability to have some other things in there based on your board resolutions to have, restricted or committed or assigned fund balances. Some libraries do that, especially when they're thinking about having I just realized I'm moving my hands a lot. No one's actually seeing that. they have maybe some restricted or some committed fund balances when they're doing or getting ready for building projects to kind of show that they've set aside that money. You guys are already there, so there's really not much of a point in doing it at this point. The bottom of the page just talks about your use of estimates. All financial statements have estimates in there, and your guys are no different. You have in there on the top of the next page 13 talks about your retirement plan. This is a one paragraph, a little snippet about what the retirement plan you guys participate in. We'll have about 8 pages coming up here in just a minute of excitement about the retirement plan. Note 2 talks about your concentration of credit risk. You have FDIC coverage of $500,000 and then pledged securities to collateralize the remaining $1.125 million in cash. Your capital assets are talked about down here at the bottom. We show there your capital asset activity, including your library collection. You have your beginning year balance, your additions, and then your end of year balance. Also has your depreciation figure there. Note 4 just talks about compensated absences. Note 5 is a general note on long-term liabilities that has all the liabilities listed here, your compensated absences, your pension, and your Opeb. It has the beginning balance, the activity for the year, and then the ending balance for each of those categories and in the total. Note 6 just talks about state aid and grants and contributions. It's just a general note. Note 7 is a general note on your property tax calendar. Just tells, the different dates that the different, pretty important parts of your property tax collection comes in. Note 8 talks about the retirement plan. Like I said, this is going to be, it's like 6 or 7 pages, something like that. We'll just hit the high notes. So the first tier, it just shows the different tiers that are available inside of the CERS plan. At the middle of this page here shows your guys' portion of the liability. So you have your proportionate share of the pension liability is $1.44 million. The total pension liability for the state in general is $7.033 billion. So you guys are pretty small in comparison to the whole thing. You'll see there that's talking about June 30, 2019. You're probably thinking, why? The state can only get the pension liability measured a year in arrears. So because of that, GASB allows us to report a year in arrears because the 2020 numbers won't be available for another 6 or 8 months. So your reports will be late at that point. So that was the GASB solution to that. That's pretty common. It's 100% of the people in Kentucky do it, but I think it's pretty common really across the country. Here we talk about your deferred inflows and outflows. The different categories, like I mentioned, were differences between projected and actual experience, changes in assumptions, difference between projected and actual earnings on plan investments, changes in proportion difference. So your proportional share of the liability is calculated each year, and that's done by looking at your covered payroll in comparison. It is this little sliver of the pie in comparison to the whole pie. And that's how your proportionate share is calculated. So that obviously fluctuates from year to year. And then the subsequent contributions are that last number. But the reason we have numbers in both columns is in one year, you may have a deferred outflow for a certain category, and the next year you may have a deferred inflow. GASB does not allow those to be combined. So we have to treat each one separately. And amortize them in over the required periods. They don't allow you to just kind of net them each year. On the next page, at the bottom of page 17, it just shows there what the fund for the state is allocated in. It also shows their long-term expected rate of return, which is now at 3.89%. That's went down pretty quickly over the past couple of years. I think in the last 2 or 3 years ago, that may have been as high as they were expecting 6 to 7%. So I think it's getting a little more realistic. On the middle bottom of page 18 here, it starts talking about Opeb. You had $344,000 in Opeb liability. The state's the total liability for the state was $1.681 billion. So again, you're the same kind of small percentage there. We talk about your proportionate share. We have the same deferred inflows and outflows related to Opeb as we did with pension. On page it's the next page here. You, of course, because in Kentucky, OPEB and pension is all part of the same CERS fund, so it's obviously going to be allocated to the same assets. It's just a duplication of that schedule there. And then we just have some more just required information, nothing really necessary to go over. We get on to note 9, which talks about risk management. Obviously, the library has certain risks. You guys mitigate all your risks through the use of insurance policies, and that's just disclosing that. Note 10 talks about coronavirus. Clearly, COVID-19 was a big change in everyone's life, and we just need to disclose here that the WHO declared COVID as a pandemic. It talks there about the fourth sentence or the fourth line down, starts talking about what you guys did in reaction to COVID, how you shut down, what you did with your workers, when you guys came back, what your capacity is, and the fact that a lot of this was dictated by government regulation, and you guys were just following those and being, good citizens, I guess would be the best way of putting it. It also says there at the bottom that the organization has not yet determined how this may affect June 30, 2021. I'll be honest, that's in every audit report we're putting out. I would assume it's in basically every audit report that's going out through the state, because no one really knows how it's going to affect 2021. Note 11 talks about subsequent events, and basically the only one we have here is just kind of an informational one that you guys are doing a construction project, and that will be taking place over the next year to however long it'll be. And we just wanted to note that it was that it was considered. Other than that, we just consider any other subsequent event up through December the 9th, which is the date of the report. The next 2 pages is our report on internal controls. We have the same deficiency that we've had, since at least we've been doing the audit, and I'm sure you had it before that too. It is listed there on it's deficiency 2020-01, and that's talked about over here, and we've covered it in the past. Basically, 10 or so years ago, maybe even longer now, FASB and GASB decided that the auditors could not write the report because there's internal controls over financial reporting, and as an auditor, we can't be part of those controls. So the library really doesn't have anyone on staff or contracted with anyone to write these financial statements. So we do it as part of our audit. We do it for most every audit. I would say most every audit that we do. It's just you guys don't have anybody who could step in, even though they don't need to, who could step in and actually get all the financial statements, more importantly, and probably even more difficult than notes, especially notes related to pension and that sort of stuff. You could not get all those in a format that would be acceptable for generally accepted accounting principles. This is really common in all of our audits, especially because most of ours are smaller organizations. Your all's position on it is the same thing that most everybody else's would have. You would have to pay someone probably $1,500 to $2,000 for something to write these notes and financial statements, and something that we're kind of already doing as part of the audit. So it's really not cost effective. It's not affecting your internal controls over cash receipts, cash disbursements, or anything like that. It basically just says in a lot of words there that you guys aren't CPAs and couldn't really write this report. And so there's nothing really outstanding there. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood it, because my guess is probably if, when the public gets this, or the bond companies, or whoever you're issuing these, whoever is reading these reports, that letter a couple pages back is probably one of the first places they go to look, see if there's any deficiencies, and yours is a pretty common one with smaller organizations. So I just wanted you to be aware so you could talk about it. The next page is your budget to actual statements. We have your original budget, your final budget, and your actual operations. And then we have just the comparisons there, the favorable, unfavorable, the variance column. There's nothing really outstanding there that needs to be gone over. Everything was pretty much fine. I think maybe you just didn't budget for capital outlays, but that's not uncommon really. The next page is, so this was the supplementary information I was talking about. So under the GASB statements for pension and OPEB, we're required to do what's going to eventually be a 10-year schedule for your schedule of proportionate share of pension liability. So I think right now we can only have like 7 because that's all that was available once that the 7 or 8. Yeah, 7, since that's all that's been available since GASB 68 was enacted. Eventually this will be a 10-year schedule. It's really just informational. It just kind of shows where you've been for the last 10 years. And it'll be a rolling 10 years. Once we get 17 years into it, it won't, present the first 7 anymore. Same thing here with your schedule of pension contributions. It's going to be a 10-year schedule. Here we have just it shows the changes in benefits and assumptions done by the actuary. Like I said before, this is kind of where you come up with those deferred inflows and outflows. There's nothing really outstanding to talk about. This is your schedule of proportionate share of Opeb. Of course, Opeb was enacted about 4 years after pension, so that's why you only have 4 years to present here. Same thing with the Opeb contributions. This is just a duplicate because pensions and Opeb is under 2 different standards. We have to present it twice, but it's literally just a carbon copy of what was on page 29 that we already went over with your changes in assumptions. Does anybody have any questions on that? I went over it pretty quickly, but I think I hit the high points.
Future pension liabilities. I'm looking at, your page 26, and it shows the last 6 years how it's gone from 728,000 to a current 1,441,000.
Mm-hmm.
What does that project out to the next few years?
I mean, I can't really say. It really just depends on, I guess, a lot of different factors. And we're basing it, again, based on the state's audit of their own system. The actuary, the state hires an audit firm to put out an audit. So, I mean, in general, just based on historical numbers, I would say it's assuming your payroll stays about the same proportionate share of the state's payroll, that the liability is probably going to go up just based on what it's done historically. Now, you did have from 2018 to 2019 where it went down, but every other year it looks like basically it's pretty much went up every year. And I don't really see, unless the state does something to help bolster those contributions and help mitigate the overall liability, I couldn't imagine it's going to go down. I don't know what they're going to do and if they really even have the money in, the second year of the coronavirus to even do anything about it. I think they were trying to last year really catch up on and make sure they made all those, but I may have heard where they didn't possibly fund everything or something. I'm not really sure, but I would expect it would go up. The good news is that liability is a liability in paper only. The only time you would need to write a check for $1.4 million is if the state just said, we're done, we're filing, we're closing everything out, everybody pony up. If they do that, we've probably got a lot more issues than worry about paying the pension liability. So I guess I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it as far as ever having to write it in one check. You're going to have to write it probably in increased contribution rates over time and that sort of stuff. And then hopefully maybe over time, some of it works its way out with maybe additional assistance from the state, them actually, paying what they probably should have paid for years and years and years. It's not a one-time problem. It's a systemic problem, I guess.
Is that actually the state, or since it's CERS, isn't that just all the CERS members? I didn't think the state made a contribution into CERS.
I think there's some sort of match that goes along with it. I could be wrong, but.
Mm-hmm. But either way, if the city and county governments are having problems because of the virus,
I think
worsen
though,
the fund.
Yeah, I think though, to be honest, that most of the cities and counties have always made their contributions. I think it's other parts of the system that have kind of failed.
Yeah, Jerry, and I'll add that they actually put a moratorium on your contribution rate for fiscal year 2020.
Well, that's good.
They're holding it, or sorry, for fiscal year 2021, they're holding it flat to, I think it's 24.06% of your non-hazardous covered payroll. And then I think, what was it? I don't know if it was general session of 19 or 20, but they effectively, the pension board can increase and probably will increase their rate of contribution by 12% per year up until I think 2028.
Yeah, so again, I think that's how you're going to pay this liability down. It's not going to be all at once. It's going to be through increased contribution rates.
Bottom line is it's going to go up simply because they have to make up the deficit that's in there from underfunding in earlier years.
I would agree with that being a true statement.
Does anybody have any other questions for Jared?
I think it looks great. Good work.
Thank you. We really enjoy working with you guys, and hope to continue to do so in the future.
So did we get an A this time?
You got an A plus even. I'm going to go A plus. My mother was an English teacher. I don't have a red pen. I have a blue pen, so she would be disappointed, but I am giving you an A plus.
And now you need for us to go ahead and officially adopt or
Yeah,
accept
once
the
you
audit.
approve it, we can take the draft off and get everything over to Karen and get this pesky thing up on the website like they were talking about earlier and all that.
Okay, well, let me ask all the board members, does anyone want to defer on taking a vote on it tonight to approve, to take additional time to look at it? Or does everyone feel comfortable going ahead and having a vote on that now?
Let's vote on it.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with voting.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion to go ahead and accept and approve the audit report?
So
I'll make
moved.
that second.
Okay. I've got a second. All in favor of accepting and approving the audit report?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries 5-0. We've approved the audit report.
Thank you, Karen. We'll get in touch tomorrow to see how many hard copies and stuff you need, and we'll get you a PDF tomorrow morning too, okay?
Great. Thank you, Jared.
All right, you guys have a nice rest of your meeting.
Thank you. You have a good evening.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. I guess the next item out of order is Tom. Tom's been waiting there for a while listening to this. So Tom, what's the state of the building?
Well, and I appreciate you having me here, Gerald. And I was expecting to tell you all that I've gotten the drawings to Codell. That's what I mentioned to you last month. And the Christmas holiday, I misjudged how my staff were in or out. So to make a long story short, I'm actually getting those drawings to Codell on Friday. But the good news is not only has that allowed us to get the work done, but there are a couple of items that we've coordinated with Karen and with Collective Spaces and with Staggs and Fisher, our engineers. And there were a couple of questions that she wanted me to bring to you all. And they're minor issues relative to the addition. But one of those, of course, we're constructing the new local history room. And if you're up on the second floor, there's an aisleway sort of in the center of the adult collection where there will be a glass door entry, a pair of doors that will occur just at the end of that aisle. And the glass doors have a glass transom overhead. Currently, we have in gilded letters, local history room. And if you've probably noticed, there are similar gilded letters on the outside of the building that say Woodford County Public Library, right there at the front window of the Logan Hill Memorial. And we can change that such that you all have different naming options. If you all want to call this the Brand X History Center or omitted it altogether, but currently that's what we have. We have gilded letters that state local history room.
I wasn't sure if we wanted to call it the local history room, or if you wanted to call it like the Woodford County History Room. I wasn't sure, but do we have to commit to the name, or can we just say we need so many letters, or?
No, we need not. In the drawings, I can identify that we have a right to provide up to X amount of letters. And what that means, obviously, the more, if you all turn this into a really long title, I've got limited area, so it's going to shrink. But no, I can leave that as unlimited text.
Okay, so it's not going to be the Karen Casacavage Woodford County History Room.
Maybe if you get a nickname.
Okay, just checking. So yeah.
Susan, do you have any input on that?
Well, I not at this time, but I had to chuckle at Karen's suggestion. I mean, I haven't quite learned how to spell Karen's name yet, so maybe if we put it up on gilded glass, we can all learn how to spell it.
But I think this is something that we probably should, I know it's kind of such a minor detail, but, maybe we just kind of think about it collectively and then discuss it in February. Is that fair enough, Tom?
It is. And what I'll do is I'll simply change my requirement to be unlimited text. And that way you have far more time and beyond February.
Okay.
So if you want to keep, and if you want to talk about that months later, that should be fine.
And I'll take that back to our board and see what suggestions, if they have any, and then can bring that back to you next time.
Maybe we could auction it off, see how much money we could get for
Hey,
it.
there you go. Good idea.
Have to have a minimum. Oh,
Bye, Christian. Thank you, sir. Oh, are you bidding on it?
oh. I thought he was going to say that we couldn't do that. It would violate IRS rules.
I was just about to say you can't do that. It would violate IRS rules.
Oh. All good ideas go down the tubes. Okay.
But we can take donations in lieu of, correct?
You can tell he's an attorney.
It's all in the wording.
Okay, well, what we'll do is I'll change that to unlimited text, and we'll cross that bridge at another date. On a similar vein, on our drawings at this moment, I identify a dedication plaque, and that would simply identify what the project was, the year, any members or individuals that the board would like to identify, and the principal architect, engineer, CM. Again, that's something that we do standard, but that is purely up to you all. And if you want it, we can do the same thing. We give it unlimited text and figure that out. And if you want to take it off, that's fine too.
Bill, you and Karen were here when the library went under renovation. My recollection is I know there's one plaque as you go into the library.
There's a couple. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And sometimes you can over plaque is the thing, but certainly, if we want the plaque, we've got room for it, right, Tom?
That's correct. I haven't identified the location, but I've identified a pretty generous size plaque. And again, all that can be manipulated as you all see fit.
Oh, I didn't know it was generous. Like, what's generous?
Oh, I think it's probably in the neighborhood of, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think it's in the neighborhood of like 18 inches by 24 inches.
About the size of the one in the main branch.
Probably so.
Because that's big if it's the size of this one, but maybe not. Oh.
And again, I don't need to know exactly. If you like the idea, we'll keep it, and we have unlimited text on it. If you don't think you need it, then we'll simply get rid of it. And the plaque itself, we're talking several hundreds of dollars. We're not talking about this isn't cast out of bronze.
Do you all want to think about that one as well?
Well, I'm just looking at, you don't need to know what's going to be on the plaque now. You just need to know that whether we're okay with the concept of a plaque.
I've made an assumption on the drawing as to what you all would want. And by and large, I'll list your all's board membership. But again, that is really just a placeholder. The contractor is required to submit a shop drawing after we gather your actual names.
Why don't we defer that until next month? And in terms of, I guess you need what, if you need what would be on the plaque.
No, well, not really. And I'm okay with deferring it. I mean, even when these things are out to bid, if we will issue clarifications ultimately to the bidders, and at that time we can say omit the plaque, or we can say increase the size to a 5 foot by 10 foot. So we still have some plasticity if you want to put it off.
I'd like to be around for that 5 foot by 10 foot plaque. Looks like it'll probably have photos on it too, or engraved images.
So, but I'm okay with deferring that. Why don't you all ruminate on it, and I'll make it a point to bring it up at the next meeting.
Okay.
One other item that when I was speaking with Karen, you all probably remember that we're upgrading the lighting throughout the library. By and large, the existing linear pendant lights are having their interior fixture components removed and replaced with LED. So those will wholly look the same as they do right now. There are some locations that we will have new lighting. And for instance, the central space at both the first floor and the second floor, lounge space, if you will, have a traditional pendant bowl. And what our engineers come up with, and it's agreeable at least to Collective Spaces, the interior designer, and to Karen and to myself, is a more contemporary pendant. And I think I have an email of those that I can show you all if you have an interest in seeing them.
So that's going to be the reason why I asked Tom to talk about it, because of the replacement. It's going to be a significant change in the aesthetic of the space, because right now we've kind of got those, they're about 3 feet, they're round pendants and they look like school lights. And they're proposing a LED that's very stylish. Would you say, Tom?
It's far more contemporary. I think you're right. I think that what we have now is a sort of classically inspired. I think it might have a brass rim and a shallow bowl that has a lens on it. And this is really just a cylinder. So yeah, it is far more contemporary. But I think personally, I think that's desirable to help visually prove that there's been a renovation throughout the building. And also doesn't need to be quite as stoic and classically inspired.
Well, I mean, you said you had an email image that we could look at if you wanted to.
If I can actually manage to share my screen.
Okay.
For everybody to cross their fingers. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oops. Yeah, now that is not the pendant. This is the light fixture that would occur in the staff workroom. These images are a little bit difficult to read, but you all are probably accustomed to looking up at an office light, a 2x4, and sometimes it either has a lens right at the bottom of it or a troffer, an egg crate, if you will. And it's far more contemporary for there to be a lens on the sides. So what you'll see there's actually a lens, a vertical lens here, and a metal pan reflector. And again, this is in a workspace. This isn't really a public fixture. So I'll move on, but if anybody has questions, please jump out. Okay, this again is also a little difficult to view. There are a few spaces that we don't have enough of the existing linear pendants to reuse those. And what the 3 locations specifically are in the children's activity room, because we're doubling the size of that, we don't have replacement fixtures to continue that. So what we're doing in that space is a slot. Now, but that slot is actually flush with the ceiling. It's not going to hang. You can see a profile of that in this diagram. So it's a 4-inch wide slot that is flush with the ceiling. You can see a ceiling edge there. Now, also, you probably remember in the front of the building where the DVD collection is, the ceiling is quite high. And I think Karen made a good choice for us to actually bring our lighting down. Originally, it was proposed to use can lights up there, but she correctly noted that's going to create a maintenance hardship to replace it or to clean those fixtures on occasion. So we intend to use the same rectilinear fixture as a pendant that hangs in that space. And that way, it too will be a little bit more contemporary in profile compared to the elliptical pendant lights that you have right now. So this will be as a slot in both the children's activity room and as a slot in the new teen meeting room and as a pendant fixture in the what it will be the lounge internet cafe. And this is the pendant light we were speaking of that would replace the existing bowls that you have on the first and second floor. So it still has some attributes that are classical. I mean, it has the nice branches that come over and carry it. And similar to what I was describing on that first recessed 2x4, it has a nice reflective exterior skin, and the interior is actually the luminescent surface for that. So it throws out a nice diffuse light, both high and low. But again, it gives, stylistically, it's not so different from what we have. I mean, it's circular and roughly the same diameter, but it has a far more contemporary appearance. This is a similar idea. This was selected by Collective Spaces. In the new Internet Cafe Lounge, there will be a central round table that helps define that space. And to further sort of announce that you're someplace different, this larger hula hoop fixture would be what hangs directly over that circular table. And it is on axis with the large central window.
They said that the designers like the fact that people driving down Main Street at night would be able to, look in that front window and see that, which I know that's like an odd thing to mention, but they thought that that would be a really cool thing. So.
Yep, and I agree. I think I like it's a nice, sleek appearance, very sympathetic to what will happen in the circulation space, but a little bit more edgy.
What finishes are you thinking of choosing for those?
We actually we don't pick out the finishes. Virtually everything that we'll present to you all will ultimately get to make that choice yourself. Now, looking down here, it looks like you've got the possibility of a black or a natural brass finish. And you'll probably have, on these others, you have the choice of black, brushed aluminum, or white. And what will eventually happen, once this is under contract, Collective Spaces and I will work with Codell and others and come to you all with a comprehensive color board that identifies, okay, this is the carpet, this is the paint, this is the hardware, these are the light fixtures. So we spoke of this earlier. That's that rectilinear linear pendant that would occur in the high ceiling of the new lounge space. That's the same thing. And so that's really the extent of the primary lighting. We will have some can lighting in spaces, but I didn't want to bore you with that because it's typically a standard can light. And that's all I have lighting, unless you all have any other questions.
I like it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if anybody had any objections to it or problems with
No.
it.
Great choices.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And the few other odds and ends that I have for you all is last month we spoke about getting a temporary construction easement from the agent who manages the building of the law office next door. And yeah, she has granted approval. I don't have a signed copy of that, but that is one item that is virtually done. One other item that we have to do is a consolidation plat. As far as building code is concerned, you all might, even if you own the property, it needs to be consolidated such that it's all one contiguous plat. Otherwise, the housings, building, and construction would be looking for firewalls where we don't need them. So we had Matt Seaball, a surveyor, perform that. He sent me his information just this week, and I'll get that to Peggy. There's a February 8th deadline that she has, but I'll get that to her likely next week and hopefully get that registered and moving on. Another item you all may remember, when we got approval from the BOAR for our renovation and demolition plan, they wanted to see some follow-up documents, and those too have been submitted to Patty. I'm waiting any comments or reservations that she may have, but I'm not expecting anything odd there. And let's see, in my sit down with Karen last Thursday, we tweaked a wee bit some of the furnishings plan and added some power in some public spaces. That's another thing that bumped me a little bit on time, but I'm expecting all that will be concluded by Friday. And it's not unusual for projects to include an alternate or an allowance. We don't have any alternates on the project, and an alternate is if you have something that you want to add or deduct from the project. Sometimes you identify that and seek a price, but you're not committed to that being in the base bid. We haven't spoken of any alternates in this project, so I don't have any of those to report. But we also haven't spoken about allowances. Sometimes you would have an allowance if there are things that are not yet defined. For instance, if you're getting a sewer tap, sometimes that fee is not an absolute known sum, and the contract documents identify an allowance to reasonably have that included in the cost. So by and large, we don't have any need for those. Most of our utilities are already in place. The one item that I proposed adding an allowance is just for unknown conditions. Dealing with, even though we're demolishing a significant portion of the former flower basket, there still may be surprises that come to us. One item of concern that I have is just above the storefront, there's a sheet metal entablature, a nicely profiled projection. And similar to that, on the very top of the building, there's a sheet metal cornice. It's possible that the interior wood framing of those could be rotten, in which case we might have to do some repairs. And you can always find found conditions that might be a problem. So I'm proposing that we put an allowance of $20,000 in the contract such that if we find things, we at least have a wee bit of cushion built in. Now, that doesn't mean that in the worst of situations that any found conditions would be $20,000. It may be more and it may be far less. It just gives a little bit of a buffer so that we have some monies readily available to access in case there are found conditions. And if there are monies drawn from that, that's all done with your all's blessing. So it's not a slush fund. It's simply a way to not have to pick on you all repetitively day by day if something happens.
Does anybody have any objections to that?
No.
Okay.
And
So you've got our blessing then.
okay, so again, these drawings will be concluded on Friday. Codell will be issued those, but we'll also issue those to Housing's Building and Construction, which is a requirement. They will review it for code compliance. It will also go to the Woodford County Health Department. More than likely, they typically want to see any effect to plumbing fixtures. But so all those things will happen likely on Friday. If my memory serves, Travis Curry with Codell said he needed more or less, I think, 8 days to prepare his bid documents. Because this is a CM project, they essentially break it out into various bid packages. A masonry package, a door and window package, a finishes package, and then they will elicit bids from various contractors. So he needed roughly 8 days to do that. Now, typically, most of our projects are bid for approximately 1 month. This is this relatively small project, although what it lacks in square footage, it adds in complexity. And I attempted to call Travis today, but was unlucky. So he may ultimately come back and say, you don't need a month, you might need 3 weeks. So I can't address to you today what the bid date would be. At this point, I would say, let's give him his 8 days to do his work and assume it may be a month out. But if you'll allow me to reach out to him Monday when he's back in the office, I'll ask him to confirm that, and I'll share that with Karen. And
Okay.
also with Lewis. I'm sure Lewis and Christian are interested for their own needs as well.
Okay.
Good.
And I believe that's really all I had. What am I forgetting, Karen?
I think that's it. And I think that allowance is a great idea. I think Bill and I learned a lot with this building that you just never knows can.
Well, no, you don't know. I will say, I think we've taken out as much unknowns as we can. As for instance, we talked eons ago about doing a geotechnical investigation. After I reviewed that with our structural engineer, he looked at the geotechnical report that was done on the addition of the library previously, and we've elected to go ahead and extend our foundations down to rock. Rock is relatively close, and if we can take down our foundations to rock, we feel absolutely comfortable that it's the ideal situation. You won't have settlement, which also means that we won't have to do another geotechnical report. So, and for instance, we're cleaning a lot of surfaces. We're not trying to do it piecemeal. We're trying to do things wholly. So we're trying to reduce risks where we may, but there are always found conditions. Or if you want to make a change and go for that 5 foot by 10 foot dedication plaque, we've got room for that. But it sounds like you all had a long meeting. So unless you all have questions of me, you've answered all my questions. And I'll get this information to Codell the end of day Friday or first thing Monday, and we'll march on. I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate it.
Have a pleasant evening.
Thanks, Tom.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Well, I guess that concludes our guests this evening. So I'm going to move back then to the first part of the agenda, and we'll go from there. The first item in order is the approval of the December minutes. So has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes of the December regular board meeting? I'm going to assume you have. If are there any revisions or additions? And there doesn't seem to be any. So do I have a motion to approve the submitted minutes for the December board meeting?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. The next item is the approval of the minutes of a special board meeting conducted on January 8th. Does anyone have any changes or revisions to those minutes?
Motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of approving the minutes for the special board meeting held on January 8th?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the financial report. Karen?
Yes, sir. Believe it or not, we're halfway through our fiscal year. This is very hard to believe, but we're 6 months in. We should be at 50%. You know, I like to look at those percentages each month. And we're currently through December the 31st, we're at 41.5%, or we were. So we're actually about 8.5% under right now. And of course, that would be due to the layoffs of the part-time staff and some of our programming expenses. So I wasn't surprised at that at all. And actually, you know, that may help us a little bit with some of the minor expenses for the next 6 months. And then also the list of our bank accounts. We do have a CD that's gonna come due, but it's not until February the 28th. So that's after our February board meeting. So I guess Patrick and I can discuss at our next board meeting what we'd like to do. And that's all I have. If anyone has any questions about any of the transactions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions for Karen? Okay,
Nope.
Can I have a motion then to approve the financial report and approve the payment vouchers?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
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 Okay, all in favor of approving the financial report and the payment of the vouchers?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the Friends report. And Karen,
Mo,
are you?
or Mo, you're done, aren't you?
I am, and they have not selected a representative as of yet, and I've signed off at the bank as the treasurer and sent my resignation in. So I imagine that'll be taken care of sooner than later.
Well, we'll just we'll pass over that for the moment and check back in with that at the next meeting. The next item then is the report from the Woodford County Historical Society. Susan,
Okay.
how's it going?
Okay, we had opened back up again the early part of January. We didn't really make a public announcement that we were open, but we hung our sign out and so that people would know that we were there. We have just recently finished our newsletter, and I wanted to ask Karen, we do a quarterly newsletter, and I wondered, do you receive that at the library? I know at one time I had asked them to put you on the mailing list, but wondered if you actually are getting those, and if not, I will check into that.
Okay.
And,
Yep.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we've had some, in fact, today I have been just suddenly bombarded with research requests. I volunteer down there every Friday, and I have a full day set for this week in doing research. we did have some question from a member of the board about how items were going to be cataloged, about the moving of items from our building to the library and back again. And I don't know what, I shouldn't be so catty because we're on live, but anyway, I discussed that with Karen and she clarified for me exactly how that was going to happen. And I went back and clarified it with our board. So I think we're just fine with that. So that would be all the news from the Historical Society.
Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Welcome, welcome.
The next item on the agenda is the report from the Versailles Library. John?
Hello, everyone. I just want to report, I guess, that as I have in the past month, the demand for curbside service is steady. But it comes to no surprise that I guess our circulation is down a little bit. But I thought it'd be interesting to kind of look at our virtual library statistics, kind of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, to see how the events have kind of heightened the awareness and usage of that the digital library. And basically around in the kind of the pre-pandemic, kind of the year last year, fiscal year 1920, before the pandemic, we were averaging about 3,900 circulations. But in the kind of moving from April through the current year, we've been averaging about 5,100 circulations per month from our digital library. And right now we're on pace to circulate over 60,000 items through our digital library through the course of the fiscal year, which will be up from about a little over 50,000 last year, which is a significant increase. And it has mitigated some of the other items that have kind of decreased in circulation while we've been only limited to kind of curbside pickup. So if hopefully, if we're searching for maybe silver linings, kind of going forward, this will be a resource that people have come to learn more about and learn how to use. The other thing I was going to mention is that the craft programs continue to be a big hit. I was going to share one anecdote that I was meeting with a patron to take out I guess we're doing an abstract art program next week. And she just mentioned just how grateful she was that we were doing these and that how important it was to her to kind of be able to do them when other options weren't available to her in terms of library programming. And that's about it. I was going to kind of, as I kind of transition over to Stacy, I was going to mention that we have a Weedo Michael program next week, but she's going to be the one taking the lead on that. So I let her, if she has anything to say about that, talk about it.
One question for you, John. Do you see any possibility that some of the traffic that before that used our paper or our printed books might just be migrating to the virtual librry?
Well, that remains to be seen. I wondered that myself. That if that will be now how they interact with the library. That be their way of getting materials. I mean, I know that's we are seeing kind of even before the pandemic, a change in how people consumed information and consumed books and different things. And I think this may have accelerated that. Whether it's a permanent change or one that just is a blip on the screen, I don't know. But that would be. I know for a lot of users, the tactile, reading a book is very important to them. But for others, I think they can kind of go both ways, and then some just wherever they can get the item is fine by them. And then I'd say for a few that they might become that the ebook or the audio book that they can download is kind of the new way that they'll get books kind of going forward.
Okay.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mr. Butcher.
Sorry, I keep on trying to turn my microphone off so you can't hear me breathing heavily because of this thing. Does anyone have any other questions for John? Okay.
John, did you want to plug your bingo?
Oh, yes, the winter reading bingo. Yes, thank you, Patrick.
Sorry, Stacy.
That's also going on. It's a good way to kind of get people engaged into reading and maybe, reading on occasion some things that they may not otherwise encounter. And they get a mug if they complete the bingo sheet.
I'll have to see if I can get that this year. Stacy, what's going on in Midway?
Well, I don't really have a whole lot of Midway specific news as far as the branch goes, but like John said, we're having a program on Monday night with Rita Michael. We'll be interviewing her on Facebook Live. It's at 6:30, so if anybody can tune in. We've also invited, with Wita's blessing, Jeannie Groff, who worked for Wita Michael Restaurants, and she helped to write the book. And they're good friends and they're just fun to talk to. So I think that'll really help with the conversation, having both of them there to talk about the book and the restaurant business right now. And we've got a lot of interest in that. And then I just wanted to mention the town hall series that we signed on to do with the Chamber of Commerce. We had our first town hall. We're calling it Discovering Woodford. And we had panelists that spoke about community resources. And I interviewed them, and I think it went really well. We had a great conversation. We had a lot more people tune in that follow the chamber through that outlet. Lots of great questions, and I think it's going to be a good thing going forward. I think in February we're going to talk about elder care in nursing homes, and so I think it's a great partnership, and it was very successful.
That was a real home run. I said, Stacy's our own little Savannah Guthrie. She did such a good job. And I was only able to jump on there the second half hour. And I think there were close to 40 people on there when I was watching it live. And then it went to their YouTube channel, I think. Is that correct, Stace?
Yes.
And it has had like a couple thousand people, did you say, had looked at it?
Yeah, it's had several views, for what that's worth. But again, I was just really impressed with the live comments and people that were watching it in real time. I think that's more than we usually get, for a library program. So
they did a great job. All of them, all of y'all did.
So it's still on there if anybody wants to watch that. And the last thing I just wanted to say is thank you for the fleece jackets. Our staff, it's gone over very well. Everyone's very appreciative, and they're very comfortable, and they look nice, and everyone's very pleased. I think. John
Crawford, do you have yours on? Oh, you took it off. It's okay.
I took it off, but it is very nice.
It's very nice. Everyone really, really loved them. I mean, it was a real. It's like the nicest thing that happened to us all year. It was so nice. Thank you.
Well, I guess we better move forward. Karen, it's the director's report.
Yes, I would like, Christian, are you locked in the basement? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, there we go. I'm in my own personal library.
Okay, it's so good of you to stick with us. I was like,
well, I wanted to hear the audit, and then and I'm just hanging around. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm glad you're here. So I know we've had an extremely long meeting. I'm going to run through just a few things, if I may. I did make a late. I'm going to jump off of the agenda for just one moment. I did put a late entry into the board packet. It's a short list of surplus computer equipment because we're continuing to clean out the basement. I was hoping that we could get those items declared surplus so we could move those to e-recycling.
I'll make a motion to move the indicated items to surplus.
Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor of declaring the items surplus?
Aye.
Aye.
No, any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. You can get rid of them, Karen.
Great, thank you. The next thing, John and I were discussing, with the building project starting, we're going to need to bring back one of our part-timers who is a cataloger. before pre-pandemic. And so I did speak to her the other day. She is willing to return to work. So I hope to bring her back on board within the next month or so. So I just kind of, that's just it doesn't need any, I just want, that's just a more of, we're moving forward, which is exciting, kind of an FYI. And so the last thing I have on the agenda, and it's actually D and E under the director's report, is reopening the library to the public. And then that in turn will affect the President's Day discussion. That is, President's Day is February the 15th. We're typically, we have historically been closed on the 15th for an all staff in service day. There's no reason for us to have that this year. So however we decide, I think that we should consider just being open that day instead of having a holiday. So reopening the library to the public, just a couple of things. And this is an update because I did check with the contiguous counties for the last meeting. I checked with several of them. I was not able to reach Mercer County today, but Franklin is curbside until their February board meeting. Anderson County is curbside until February the 16th. Jessamine County reopened yesterday to the public. Fayette County is staying curbside while they're still in the red zone, and Scott County is remaining curbside until February the 9th, which I believe is their next board meeting. So taking that into account, the incident rate during our special board meeting on January the 8th was 54. As of yesterday, our incident rate is 60.9, which is just like, so John and I had a discussion this afternoon, and at this juncture, it's very hard to make a recommendation. I mean, I think that we're dealing with the same ball of wax that we have almost every single month since the pandemic started. If we want to reopen, we can reopen. John and I discussed it. We could probably pull this off Monday, the 25th, or if we wanted to wait just a little bit longer, we could reopen on Monday, February the 1st, which is a week and a half from today. I think that waiting to see what happens, or it's just kind of like different, it's just making that decision. It's just not going to make it any easier if we wait. The vaccines are coming. We are not in we're not in 1B. I looked at the CDC guidelines again. We are waiting for a request. The state library has spoken to Dr. Stack, requesting that public library workers be moved into the essential workers. But currently that would put us in 1B, but currently we're in 2, which is basically where everybody 40 and older gets vaccinated. So,
So what is your recommendation?
it's, and I don't mean to stumble on this because I think about it all the time. And I mean, it's either we just go for it or we wait. I mean, that's basically where we're at. A curbside is working well for us. But I also know that some of the services are deficient. People are wanting to come in, they're wanting to use the computers, they're wanting to, use the study rooms. I mean, there are things that.
Karen, may I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't mean to overstep. coming from a perspective of a parent and being located right next to the schools have reopened this week. And I think with restaurants open and schools open, and I'm all for keeping us safe and the staff safe, but I think there's an expectation from the public for us to be open. And that's what I'm getting from patrons.
Karen, this is Mo. What would be your response if you did open and went along for a week, 2 weeks, and all of a sudden there was a spike in illnesses in your staff, or through the contract system, we found out a lot of visitors there were the super spreaders in the library? How would you close the library down once you opened it?
We'd have to go back to curbside. As long as we can staff it, yeah, I would go back to curbside until, I mean, if this goes through the staff, that's when we're going to be really hurting, you know. But if we can maintain some level of health with the staff members, we should be fine, you know. And then we do bring a couple of part-timers back in when we're open to the public. I would recommend that we do not go back to our full service hours yet, that we keep them at the hours that we have right now, probably until we come out of that red zone, and then we can come back full throttle. But it's just, I mean, the infection rate's going down, I think, across the state, which is good. But I mean, we've done it before, you know. We shut down completely, you know, then started curbside, then opened, then back to curbside. So it's almost like riding a wave. But I agree with Stacy, and I think John is on the same page, that all three of us, you know, agree that I think that there is an expectation from the public that we go ahead and open. But, you know, then we decide when, you know, if we want to shoot. I mean, I don't think tomorrow would be a good choice, but next week or the first, I think would be two good options.
Karen, if you open up, are there any limitations or restrictions you would like to see put in force?
But we're still, you know, the computers are still separate. And honestly, I think the public is still being very cautious, I think, for the most part. You know, they're limiting their visits and their exposure. And so we were never at capacity. I mean, we were always at a very comfortable level. It's not like we were overrun. So.
Well, we're subject to the same capacity restrictions as any other facility as well, I would think. I mean, having had personal experience with the effects of COVID, I would be extremely hesitant to reopen because I know the consequences of someone getting it. It's bad. It's really, really bad. But at the same time, I understand the argument of the expectation of the public that we be open, and, you know, us being no different than, you know, a lot of the other public facilities that are open, restaurants, schools, you know, what have you. So it's tough.
I'm just curious, but if we open and if just one person on staff gets it, we've got, how much of a risk is it that we'll have to at least shut down for a few days in order simply for certain people to either get tested or to, you know, to wait until the incubation period has passed? So, I mean, if we open, do we have a risk that we might have to completely shut down for a short period because one of the members of staff has it and we're concerned about the rest of the staff?
I don't think so. You know, when I spoke to Cassie Prather early on, or about 6 months ago, you know, with all of us wearing, like the staff being around each other wearing masks, and when dealing with the public, I mean, she almost like lined out that the coworkers wait 5 days and get tested if we're not, you know, experiencing any symptoms. So I mean, if one of us gets it, I don't think we'd have to shut down.
So, well, let me make sure I understand. Let's say the people working at the main branch, someone gets it, does that mean that the other people that were there during that time period would also have to stay away for 5 days?
No, she just said to just wait, wait 5 days, I guess, because of the incubation, and then get tested. And if we test negative, then we're good to go. I mean, it wasn't like if one of us gets it, like we have to shut down. I mean, we would probably consider maybe that deep cleaning that we had discussed earlier on. So,
Well, we're not really doing any tandem type activities anyway, are we? Where people are working in close contact.
no. And we've moved people out of their offices or their workspaces. We've got the teen librarian is in the gallery. The adult services librarian is in one of the study rooms. The children's librarian is in the children's programming room. So we're keeping separate. We do a great job when it's us. We just have to maintain that social distance with patrons, and sometimes that's a little bit difficult. But we do have, I think, some good protections in place, especially like the plexiglass, and we always wear a face mask when we're out of our chairs. So, I think there's a lot of risk involved, and, thank God we've been safe so far. And, we were open for 5 months.
Well, I don't have a problem with at least targeting to open up February 1 and then at least reassessing. I mean, for you to reassess maybe the Friday before, just to see if things are spiking again. It may be a reason to postpone, but I could see setting a target for February 1 and just planning on that and seeing if the wave is supposed to be coming down. I mean, I think the trend now is that it's coming down slightly, but it's hard to tell exactly where it's going to go in the next week or so. It seems to be spiking in other places. So
Yes. And yes. But that would give us another week and a half. And I think if we tell the public that we're planning on opening February the 1st, I think that would go a long way.
I would even say if we're going to do it on the 31st, because at least that's a Monday, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it?
I think February 1st is a
No,
Monday.
you're right. I looked at my calendar incorrectly. The 1st is Monday.
well, what's everyone say?
I think, Karen, if you go out and tell the public what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you're not opening right now, but you're planning on doing it on the 1st, I think that's a real positive step. I guess that's what I would do.
I agree.
Same here. I think that gives a little time to monitor the situation with the target to open in the near future.
Well, then I guess I don't know if we need to have a motion or not, but we are in agreement then that directors authorized to go ahead and plan to reopen the library to normal service on February 1, but that she will check to see what the tendency is as of, I guess, that Friday or that Thursday. And then if it appears that things are not going down or not stabilized, that she'll let us know if we need to go ahead and postpone that opening date. And if you I guess it would be helpful if you just kind of shoot us an email at that point to say it's a go still that Friday, so we know. And if anybody has any concerns, we can have a special meeting and talk about it.
I think John, Stacy, does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. In a sense, yeah.
I think it's a good plan.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. And you've got your marching orders then, or your authorization, one of the two.
Woo! You got this.
I mean, I guess the other issue you had for us was whether the library should remain open on President's Day as opposed to close for an in-service day.
Yes, sir. So I think that we should, I mean, either way, I think we should just let that day go and stay open. I mean, I don't think that it makes sense to close that day. Like, let's just keep it. Because we'd be working anyway, you know, it'd be an in-service day. So instead of closing to the public, or, I mean, I don't want to have an in-service day. That would be horrible to, I think, subject the public to, because, you know, I mean, if we're here, we should at least be doing curbside, is the way I feel, you know. So Jerry and I discussed this just a little bit last week, that if we do find the need for a service or in-service day, maybe we could look later in the year, like in August. We're typically slow if we need to have one, but if not, I think we just go ahead and let it go this year due to circumstances.
So does anybody have any objection to that? I don't think we need to have a motion on that, since the library would be functioning anyway. It just wouldn't be open to the public. So opening it to the public wouldn't require a vote. So no one objecting to that proposal. We're okay with it then.
Okay, well, I sure do thank you all. I know these decisions are tough and they just haven't gotten any easier, you know, but I certainly appreciate your all's time and concern.
Do you have anything else for us?
No, sir.
Does anybody have any other issues to bring before the board?
I just have a question. In May, we authorized the waiving of fines, but only through December 31st of 2020. Do we want to revisit whether to waive the fines as the COVID pandemic has continued?
That's a good question. Karen, do you have any recommendations for us?
I think the fine waiver is a good thing. We have not resumed charging those fines, but I think that due to, once again, the circumstances, that I think it's gone a long way. I think it's helped a lot of people.
It's not going to blow a hole in our budget.
Well, I mean, we're going to lose some money, but just the fact that they go into quarantine and then they're cleaned, I mean, that could take a whole week in some cases. So, I mean, I think it's a good thing. They don't need to be, people have enough worries. They don't need to be worrying about library fines. That's for sure. Sure.
So Patrick, did you want to, are you making a motion that we extend the suspension of library fines until, you have a specific date in mind?
I hadn't really thought of a date. Does everyone feel comfortable doing it for 6 months till the end of June, or a year? 6 months, at the end of June gets us at least through the fiscal year, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
So why don't we just do it through the end of the fiscal year?
Okay. So we have a motion to suspend the assessment of fines till the end of the fiscal year. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. So we'll continue not assessing fines at least until the end of the fiscal year. That's a good point.
Call. Thank you.
I'm glad you raised that issue, Patrick.
No problem.
Anything else? Well, I would say, Patrick, just out of, is your wife doing okay?
Better. She's doing better. A little bit every day. She gets a little bit better. The big thing's exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
She's just fatigued. Just crushes you.
Well,
go ahead.
We've sure been thinking about you.
Well, I appreciate that. We are taking advantage of the online offerings, where some of those numbers John was talking about earlier.
Okay.
Okay, well, does anybody have anything else? If not, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, we're finished then. Thank you all. Yeah.
Karen, if you have any checks that need signed, I'm actually coming to Versailles tomorrow. And I'm out of quarantine, so you're okay.
Okay. I don't have any right now, but thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you all.
See ya.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good evening.
Good night, everybody.